Hello, hello. Welcome to season 5 of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them. I see way too many business people letting their businesses or their jobs run their lives versus them figuring out with real clarity about what they want their lives to look like and having their job or their business be the conduit to have that life that they absolutely love. I want to thank you so much for listening in to season 5. This season is filled with motivation, inspiration, leadership, and wisdom from some super interesting guests, and myself included. My hope is through our shared experiences, you will see a bit of yourself and move further into leading your own lit up life. If you're enjoying this podcast, please feel free to share with others and leave a rating, and a comment or two would be awesome too. Let's get going. Thanks again for being a part of our community.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am just thrilled today to have my guest Marie on with us, and I'm going to have her introduce herself here in a second. But I met Marie. She spoke at a networking event that I was at in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I was just intrigued, Marie, with your story that you had. And we'll get into some of that during the podcast. And also, honestly, like there is this draw to you because you have this poise and sophistication that I looked at and I thought, wow, like this is part of that. I've talked to a stylist earlier in the year before I went to Paris. And one of the things that I had down was I wanted to be put together, kind of sexy femme chic, right? And have this like classic look. And I looked at you and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's like hit all 3 of those categories that I talked to my stylist about. So you just really intrigue me. And you have this resiliency about you and courage also about you that I know we're going to get into in the podcast. So without jumping into that, introduce yourself to the listeners and just tell a little bit about how you show up in the world.
All right. Well, I'm Marie Widmyer, and I am 54 years old, which I don't know why I think that it's important to say that, but I've been around a while. I'm married to my wonderful husband, and we have 4 children, 4 grown children. Our oldest son has 2 daughters, almost 6 and 3. And I actually share a birthday with my oldest granddaughter on February 6th. And I'm really excited because it will be her golden birthday this year. And I don't know if you know what that is, but it's the age you turn on the day of your birthday. So hers is the 6th, so she's turning 6.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm going to take her to New York to the American Girl doll store, and we're just going to have a great time.
What a special time.
Just got married. He got a ring, got engaged, got a cat, got married, and went on his honeymoon all within 2 months. So,
oh my gracious.
It was rather busy. He's been with this girl for a while and we really like her. And so they're going to do a big celebration next year. But, and then I have a daughter, Casey, who's in New York, and she runs our Brooklyn store. And then my daughter, Katie, which the girls are twins, lives here in Coeur d'Alene.
Oh, fantastic.
I've lived in Coeur d'Alene, since I was in junior high. So I've been here a while, and I have retail clothing stores. I've done that for about 27 years, and I love what I do. I love where I live, and I feel very blessed.
That is fantastic, Marie. And that, like, talking about love where you live, love what you do. What got you into retail?
I've just always loved fashion. And I took a 4-H sewing class when I was in the 4th grade, and I made a skirt. And I got a blue ribbon on it, and I had to model it in the county fair, like on a stage. It was in Southern Idaho, and it was the good old fashioned fair that reminds you of like when you were a kid. I feel bigger now. But yeah, it was such a great experience, and I just loved it. And ever since then, I've just loved fashion. I grew up and I didn't have the means to have all the clothes that some other kids had. And so I would rework clothes and kind of make them my own. And just because I wanted to be unique. And that's always been what I've strived for in my stores and even in my personal life. I want to be unique to me. And I don't want to be like everybody else. So I sewed my own clothes in high school, and then I worked at a retail clothing store. Marie O'Brien, she had a store for 25 years, and I worked for her off and on when my boys were younger. And then she had a store in the resort, and my husband worked at the resort. And offhandedly, he said, if you ever want to sell, you and your husband should retire and travel the world, and let us know. And it was such an offhanded comment that he didn't even come home and tell me about it. Well, the next week, she marched into his office and said, "Okay, I'm ready to sell." He came home and it's like, "Oh, do you want to own a store?" And I'm like, "Well, okay." And we had been trying to have our third child, and it wasn't happening. So I kind of felt, well, it's meant to be then. And so we signed on and took over on April 1st, which is kind of an interesting
April
day
Fool's.
to start a business. But yeah, then I found out I was pregnant with twins, and yeah, we've just trekked along for the last 27 years and made the best of every situation that we had. It was quite interesting starting, owning the business, pregnant with twins and 2 young boys at home and making that all work.
How did you do that?
I don't know. Sometimes I have to really, it was kind of like an out of body experience. It's like, oh my gosh, did I really do that? Did I really?
Yes, you did.
I did. And, there's definitely hard times. I've definitely had some great employees, which that's helped. My husband has an accounting background. So, without that, I couldn't have done that. I in the earlier days, he did a lot of the book work, but then over time, then I, took most of it over. So that helped. But yeah, I remember when we first would go to market and they didn't allow babies, and I was nursing, and we would have to drive around the block, and we'd park somewhere and I would nurse them, and then I'd go back inside and buy clothes and things like that. And so we just found ways to make it work.
Wow. And Marie, when you say that, I think how far we've come and how far we still have to go, right? And the fact that not allowing babies and not, it's interesting to see how the world has changed. And I hadn't thought about that when you go to market, some of the changes that occurred there. Now, I know you talked a little bit about your childhood, and I know then there were some pivotal moments even later in life, but your story is pretty moving. And so when I think about leading a lit up life, it's also about resiliency. It's about courage, sometimes taking risks, just like you're like, okay, let's just jump into this business. And I know a little of what I'm doing, but not a whole lot. And let's just make this happen. And for me, it feels like that's a theme of a lot of people that I talk to. It's like, okay, I'm going to look at this opportunity and I'm going to be open to this opportunity and embrace it and jump right in. And so if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your childhood. And because I think that's such a moving story. And I know you have a dear to your heart nonprofit that you work with around this too.
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in foster homes. At about age 3 or 4, my father had left my mother, and my mother had drug and alcohol abuse issues. And so we were left alone a lot, put in not safe situations. So we were taken away and put into foster homes off and on for quite a few years. And then I think in the second grade, I never returned back to her. So we would go into foster care, then we would go back to her, then we'd go to another foster home and then back to her. But in second grade, we never returned home to her. And then in the 5th grade, our parents' parental rights were taken away from them because neither one of them showed up for court. And so we became wards of the state. So yeah, I spent all of my childhood in and out of foster homes, about 20 in all. There was a couple times that we thought we would get a forever home, and then something would happen and it wouldn't be.
Heart crushing. Yeah.
So yeah, we never did get a forever home. And so, yeah, when we had our kids and our family, we didn't have any help because I don't, I know where my mom lives, and I talk to her off and on, and I don't hold any ill feelings against her. For whatever reason, she had a hard life and just wasn't able to turn things around. I've not met my father. It's been on my mind that I possibly do. So my husband and I are talking and seeing if that's something that is necessary in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And Marie, one of the things I love about that story that you just told is that I think a big key thing that I see people struggle with sometimes is that when you do have some struggle in life, if you do have circumstances, right? Because I'm a firm believer you don't have problems, you have circumstances, and
Yeah.
usually you create the problem, right? So like the circumstances that you were in, and now with grace and empathy, you're like, I'm not judging her for what happened. It happened. And and I'm a firm believer that when you say screw you in one session, right, and you're mad about something, you also have to say thank you. And so I hear you saying it's about kind of changing your heart into the gratitude of what was there and accepting that she was where she was at. And so hats off to you, because a lot of people would take the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So
I guess I always tried to look at the positive light of things. And I think had I not grown up in those 20 foster homes, I would have spent more time possibly with my mother, and maybe I wouldn't know of another life. So, I'm grateful that I was able to see and have that experience with all those families. And it wasn't all good experiences, but you have to have some bad to appreciate the good. And there definitely was some good. And I just learned that, yeah, I didn't want to have the life that my mother had, because I was able to see that there was a life outside of that.
yeah.
Yeah, my heart is knowing that I went through all of that, and that I wanted to go for a reason. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. I mean, when I was younger, I looked at that I was thankful that I was given a vision of another life. But now I want to take that life that I had and learn from it and make other people's lives better because of that. I don't want to go what I went through to go have nothing come of it. I feel like it's a good learning experience. And so I want to learn from it and hopefully bring some good from it.
Which I think, if you don't mind me going there about the nonprofit, you do that. And I look at this, I had a good friend that I worked with in Kansas City who was a foster mom, and she actually adopted her two children, and who are now grown in college. And one of the things that we talked about is this, like, it just breaks my heart that at the age of 18, you're kind of just out of the foster care system and you're just sent on your own to try to make it. And, to me, that's a huge disconnect. And I know you're doing some things in the community to make a difference in that. Do you mind talking about that a little bit? And if somebody wants to get in touch with that organization and help, how they would do that?
Okay, yeah. So when I graduated from high school, which was a miracle that I did, I wasn't the best student. I loved learning, but moving around a lot and having some issues. I wasn't the best student. But yeah, when I walked across the stage at my high school graduation, there wasn't one person sitting there for me. And it's like that day, it just really hit me that, yeah, the choices I make from now, I mean, I obviously made choices before that, but also had a lot of choices made for me being a ward of the state. I really didn't have much of a say where I lived. As I got older, I did a little bit more, but there was times I told I had to, I mean, I didn't have choices. And walking across that stage, I realized I have a choice now. I'm going to have to make the choice to whatever happens is going to be on my watch. So that, having that feeling and knowing that there's other kids out there in that same position, is hard. I mean, I see my kids now and how much we help them after high school. So the organization that I'm involved in is called Safety Net. And basically it's what the name says is it provides a safety net for those kids who turn 18 and are aging out of the system. And we help not just when they're 18, but even up to 19, 20, 21. And we provide assistance maybe in whatever they would need. Maybe they need a car to get back and forth to work. So we'll help them get a car or their first apartment. We have a warehouse that we've had a few drives where we have couches and chairs and beds, and we help furnish their apartments. And it's
Perfect.
a great organization. It started in Spokane by Molly Allen and her friend. Molly had an adoptive son, and she kind of saw what some of the kids went through. And so they provided this service. And so they've recently brought it to North Idaho. And yeah, we're just getting started. It's just Safety Net Inland Northwest. So you can find them on social medias, Facebook, and such, or even just the website, Safety Net Inland Northwest.
Perfect. And then I would say to those listeners too that don't live in the inland Northwest, I know a lot of you are in other countries as well as in particularly the Midwest, because I'm from Kansas City. And so try to find some organizations in your part of the country that service that group of people. And think back, I know I think back in my life too, Marie, and the support I got from my family, not just my parents, but extended family. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today without that. And so thank you for bringing that forward. So talking about moving forward, I want to fast forward because I know you and I talked a little bit before we started to tape about some turning points in your life. Like that was one turning point, walking across that stage and making the conscious choice. And this is what I want the listeners to kind of hear too, is that we have this capability. You could have chosen to quagmire in that and gone into the victim game, right? Or into the drama game, or like make a decision to then, hey, I'm going to go do something different and make a difference somewhere. And that's the choice that you made. And so we all have these abilities to choose. So then later in life, your kids are starting to grow up. They're starting to leave the house. And I know you had another kind of turning point moment. Tell us about that turning point moment for you.
Okay. Well, it started just a couple of years. I've had several turning points that kind of blended into each other, but the biggest turning point is, yes, my kids were getting older. And I think my girls were going into high school. My boys were off to college. And there was an article in the paper about two twin girls that were severely neglected. They were found in a filth. I mean, I get emotional thinking about it because it was just like devastating circumstances, burn marks, and they were like about a year old. And it was just heartbreaking to read that story because, I had twin daughters myself, and it just really resonated. And I remember reading the article, and it was talking about, having them taken away, but they were going to go back. That they were going to spend a certain time in foster care, and then they were going to get the parents and get them help. And growing up in that system, I know that it's really hard for parents to snap their finger and say, okay, I'm going to be a good parent now. And to know that those girls were going to go back into that environment just broke my heart. And so I said, okay, I've got to do something. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to do something. Something needs to happen in the foster care system or in young babies and children's lives, that when these things happen, what can be done? I had no idea what to do. I had a busy family, but I knew that I was going to have to find my voice. Like I'm somewhat of a shy person, but I definitely afraid of public speaking. So I thought, okay, I'll start there. So I signed up for Toastmasters to get over my fear of public speaking, because I knew that I was going to make a change. I was going to have to go out and talk in the arena and gain a voice in that field. So I did that. And then I was thinking, okay, what else can I do? I kind of looked at some different things. I really wanted to focus on when is it healthy for the kid to go back to the family and when is it not? So I interviewed a lot of counselors, a lot of professionals in that area to kind of get their take on it. I mean, I had my take. Like I said, I was thankful that I was able, that I didn't stay with just my mom, that I was able to see another way of life. And so versus that traumatic experience of being away from your family, taken apart from your family, which happens a lot, but they try and unify the kids back to the family, I think too soon. And I think at some point, if the parents can't get it together, these kids need to be adopted. They need to get a forever home. They can't spend their whole life like I did in the foster care system. I mean, there needs to be some movement to do what's best for the child. And still not sure what avenue I was going to go. I kind of remembered back, and my mother-in-law, who is now since passed away, thought I should run for Mrs. Idaho, which is a pageant for married women. And as being in fashion, and I love that makeup and glitz and glamour, and that sounds like a great idea. But I'm like, oh, I can't do that. My kids were young. And so over the years, I've always just sat in the back of my mind. And then I started realizing, doing this pageant would give me more opportunity to use my voice, to practice that skill, to get more courage to do that. And I thought this would be a great opportunity. And I kept making excuses. Every year I would just be like, no, it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. And I just felt that calling, and that was another one of the moments. I felt that calling so strong, and I kept neglecting it and not doing it and making excuses, that I kind of just like made myself like sick. I just was, I got a little depressed. I wasn't happy. I was looking at the negative things in life. And then finally I lost two of my best friends 2 months apart. And I realized, life, I may be too late. I mean, there could be, something could happen and I won't be given this opportunity. So I decided I better do that. And so, yeah, I just signed up kind of like last minute. I think it was 2 months before the pageant. And it's interesting because one of my my excuses that I always used was that I need to lose a little weight. And I swear, right after I signed up, I lost 10 pounds. Like it just flew off. I don't know where it went, but it just went away like that.
That's how the universe works. Yep.
Right. I felt such a weight lifted. It was amazing. It was amazing. So yeah, it was very scary. I don't like to really talk about myself or put myself out there. I don't like to be in a swimsuit. Not even like in my own backyard. So
I know I was going to say you went from being afraid of public speaking to now being in a bathing suit in front of hundreds of people. Yeah. Thousands of people.
Yes. So yeah, it's been a great experience. I've made some great connections, and you have to listen to that. And actually during that process, I mean, just so many doors have opened and I've got clarity on so many things. And from that, I learned that you have to grab hold of your dreams, and that's start today, regardless of your circumstances, reach, stretch beyond your comfort zone. I mean, that's where, doing that, I've gained so much. Start by setting small goals each day. I mean, each day I did something to prepare myself for that pageant, and then believe. So the acronym GRAB, believe you can do it, and don't give up. So I've gained lots of skills and lots of movement to my main cause of trying to make a difference in the foster care system.
Yeah, Marie, thank you for that story, because a couple of things hit me. And I talk to my clients and I talk to the listeners, even on different podcasts, around the fact that working with the universal laws, the law of polarity says it's all here and it's all here right now. And sometimes the law of transmutational energy just says it hasn't taken form yet. And so when you're given this desire that you were given, and then you ignore it, which a lot of us do, it sucks the energy out of you.
It does. Yeah.
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 I also I equated it to kind of like a river in a swamp, and I'd become a swamp because I had been given so much. I've been blessed with my business, blessed with my family, doing those things. I had all of this knowledge and all this information inside of me.
Yeah.
But I hadn't let it flow out. So I become like a swamp, and it's like, you need to be like a river. Things need to come in and you need to put things out. And so, I'm now a river.
That's a great analogy, though. Thank you for that. I might have to steal that.
Right?
Because
that's by definition, the swamp is water flows in and it doesn't go out. It's like if all this is poured into you and you don't pour it out.
Absolutely. And I think about, we talk a lot about being in flow, right? And so that fits right with that river. So thank you for that story. And what I also heard was step in, because life is short. And when you're given that desire, step into it, and it allowed you to have a bigger platform even to make that difference in the world. And so Marie, I so appreciate you being on the show and just the work that you do. I see the work that you do in the community in Coeur d'Alene and making that difference. And it does make a difference. So thank you for doing what you do. And Marie, if someone wanted to check out more about your retail stores, about how to make a difference and what you're doing to make a difference, where would you send them?
Okay, yeah, Debbie. So our Instagram and website is Marmalade, MARMALADE, freshclothing.com. So all of so the store, Marie's Boutique and Marmalade, and then Marmalade Brooklyn, that all flows through that. So they're all connected. So it's just one spot to go to. Yeah, and then I'm on Instagram, just Marie Widmyer, and Facebook. I'm not a huge presence in the social media network. I do a little bit. Yeah, that's another skill that I'm working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Progress.
And Marie, if you were someone like me and wanted to visit your store, is it Marie's or is it Marmalade in Coeur d'Alene?
So in Coeur d'Alene, it's Marie's Boutique, which is in the lobby of the Coeur d'Alene Resort.
Okay, I've been in there.
One
Perfect.
we started 27 years ago, and it's across from the fish tank. There's 2 stores in there, but it's Marie's Boutique. You'll see the name. Perfect. And then Marmalade is in the downtown area. So it's on Sherman. It has black and white striped awning. We don't have a sign out front. That's one thing that's always been on my list, that we've been here quite a few years now, but I just can't find the right sign. And we have these big trees in front, and so in the summertime you wouldn't see it. So yeah. And then our store is in Brooklyn, New York, and that's also Marmalade.
Perfect. Well, Marie, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And with that, folks, it's a wrap, and we will see you next week. So thank you again, Marie.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks so much for listening. The song Ride is co-written and sung by Miss Jackie Wilson and her collaborators Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee. And a huge shout out to them for allowing us to use this perfect song. Everyone have a fabulous week, and I'll talk to you next week.